Uh, Welcome to this session, and today I want to talk about grief, dealing with grief and dealing with loss in our life. Again, my name is Asan, and I'm a mental health counselor. I have been working for Timely MD, and I have been doing therapy for a couple of years now. But one of the most important thing that comes up during the sessions that I have is grief and how to cope with it, how to get over it, how to deal with it, how to handle it, and how to live our life knowing grief exists and try to get past through it. Me myself, I know a thing or two about grief. I am still to this date, I am dealing with grief. I lost my parents, my dad first when I was 10, and it was extremely hard. Our house burned down, and my father passed away a couple of weeks later because at the hospital they didn't check his lungs, and that happened. And while my dad was in the hospital, my mom was pregnant. A year later, a couple of months later, my mom and my newly born sister got into a car accident and they passed away. And I had a lot of my family member who passed away, so I know a thing or two about grief and how it can affect someone. And to this date, whenever I see parents with their kids, I always question how would my parents and my relationship with my parents would look like if they were alive today. So one thing that I want to emphasize first and foremost is that grief, although they say it has stages and it will get better, grief is not something that usually gets better over time. Grief is something that we deal with throughout our life. Yes, there are stages, but those stages are momentarily. You know, what stays with you is the thoughts, the memories, the relationship that you had with those individuals that you lose. And one thing that I learned is that it's okay. A lot of time we feel that it's not okay to be feeling the way that we do. It's not okay to feel sad. It's not okay to talk about it. It's not okay to share our thoughts or how these things make us feel. But the most fundamental aspect of going over our grief is to recognize that you matter. Your thoughts matter. Your emotions are real. And it's not a race to see who gets over it first. Rather, it's a process. The understanding of grief being a process, that's the first and most important thing that you should recognize. And you should remind yourself that I am me, and the way that I go through my emotion is different than anyone else in this world. Doesn't matter who you are, we're all different. One thing is for certain, we will all die, and every single one of us, regardless of who we are, what stage of our life is, we will encounter grief and moments that we have to cope with our emotion, with the loss of people that we had in our life. So I think it's a very important topic to really truly sit down and talk about it, especially if you are in a state that you're already dealing with a grief. So what I want to say is that, first of all, I want to say it's okay. I really want to say it's okay, and I'm sorry for it. It's okay to be sad. It's okay to be angry. It's okay to be frustrated. Bring my seat down a little bit. There you go. It's okay to be angry at the world. Stay with that anger, stay with that emotion. And the worst thing that anybody can tell you is that you'll be fine. Rather, sit down with yourself and ask yourself, okay, what can I do for me? How can I be there for myself? Talk about it. A lot of times we say, oh no, don't talk about it, because the more you talk about it, you bring it up, the more you bring it up, the more it's gonna bother you. But no. The most important thing is for you to talk about your feeling, to talk about the effect that individual had on you, to talk about the good times, to talk about the bad times. Regardless if it's your parents, if it's your friends, if it's your partner, if it's your favorite animal, if it's an object. Grief doesn't have a limit. And the thing is that sometimes we expect, because of the social things that are around us, we expect to have a limit. But no, it's not a limit. There is no limit that exists. The only limit that exists for us is the limit that we set for ourselves. So you gotta ask yourself, what type of limit do you want to set for yourself? How do you want to be for yourself? How do you want to experience the life that you have for yourself? Does not talking about it makes it go away? Truly ask yourself that. I promise you, not talking about it's not gonna make it go away. You may forget it momentarily, but eventually, one way or another, maybe you're sitting down, taking care of your things, doing your own thing, and suddenly this rage of emotion comes to you. Or maybe you're watching a movie, your favorite TV show, and then you see something, a scene, and then you ask yourself, I wish this was me. Or you feel that sadness. Hello. So it's okay. If you're grieving, it's okay. I have dealt with it and I know how difficult it is. I know how hard it is to deal with grief. And you have to remember that you matter the most. You are the most important person in your universe. Think about universe as this, as a square. Okay? This square represents you. You in the middle. And everything around it is the things that affect you. But the thing that we neglect is that center of universe, that you yourself is in charge of everything. This is your life. And if something makes you sad, if something makes you angry, if something makes you want to grieve on someone, it's time for you to grab onto your life. This is what I want you to do. Grab an object, something that you can touch, something that you can feel, and place it somewhere near you. And that center of that object, remind yourself that the center of that object is you. And you are in charge. And every time, a couple times a day, grab it, feel it. Simply, gently. And tell yourself, I am in charge. If you're dealing with grief, recognize you and the person or the thing that you lost within that. Filled. Touch it. Put meaning to it. Talk to it. express your emotion to it. It's not about overcoming it. It's not about forgetting someone. It's about coping with it. Recognizing the steps that you can take to be you and continue being the person that you want to be. Because a lot of time, the mistake that we make is that we try to shove it in the corner and just not think about it. But no, rather you need to express it. You know, when I lost my parents, I was very, very sad. It was taunting. I was angry at the world. I was angry at my parents. I was angry at my sister, even though she was only 1 year old. And everywhere I turned, every family that I saw, I tried to pinpoint something in there that I could connect to myself. Because I wasn't connected to me. I was trying to connect myself to outside. Something that didn't exist for my being. Until I realized that, I'm seeking something outside that I can seek within. I'm seeking a level of comfort outside that I need to have within. I'm seeking a level of empathy outside that I need to have within. And then I took one step. I made a piece for myself. This is a coaster. Simple coaster. But it has been with me for a very, very long time. It has a little heart in it. But it gives me comfort. Because it has a soft back, a wool type back. And on the front of it, it has imperfection. Those imperfections represents me. But yet I remind myself that I am solid. I am strong. And I have feeling. And whenever I hold it, I touch it. I remind myself of the good time. I remind myself of the bad time. And I remind myself the things that I can do to better myself. To cope with my emotions. To recognize my emotion. Because a lot of time we try to forget it. And the more we try to forget it, the bigger and stronger those feelings become. I had a client the other day and she was telling me that it's very hard for her to forget about her emotion, her sadness, because of her loss of her father. And I told her a simple yet powerful analogy, which was, I told her, imagine that, and this works with everyone. So if you're dealing with grief, this also works with you. So think about this. As I'm expressing this analogy, think about this. I told her, imagine that everything that you do in life, your job, your career, your school, is to take care of your garden. You're a gardener. You have this beautiful garden. And I asked her, what's your favorite flower? She said the roses. So ask yourself, what is your favorite type of flower? And whatever it is, imagine that you have a garden of your favorite type of flower. In this particular example, she mentioned roses. So imagine you have a beautiful rose garden that you love, you praise. Every day, from the moment that you wake up, your whole goal, your whole attention, your whole being is to take care of that garden, that beautiful, vast garden of roses, in her case. And you love it. But one of these days, as you're sitting down and taking care of your flowers, you find a little tiny seed. You pick it up and you're a gardener, so you know everything about flowers. And then you recognize that it's a seed that belongs to this certain type of weed that grows all over the place. Not the type that people smoke, it's the type that grows all over the place. Hello. And Sina, hi. And you ask yourself, what do I do with this seed? Do I get up from where I am, put it in the trash, discard it properly, or do I just bury it on the ground? And I mean, getting up, discarding it, that takes a lot of time, a lot of energy, and who has time for it? You know, right now I'm dealing with my garden. So you decide to bury it. And that's what you do. And I mean, you don't have magical beans, so they're not going to grow overnight. All of a sudden, take over your garden. So the thing was that you buried it. Day passes, 2 days, 3 days, a week, 2 weeks. But what happens eventually? She paused. And moments later, she said, well, it should root and it should grow. And I was like, yeah, you got that right. That seed that you placed in your garden will root itself out. And one of these days, it will grow. And then maybe 2 weeks from now, you're sleeping, you wake up from your beautiful nap, you're trying to go to your garden, take care of your flowers, and all of a sudden you see weeds all over your garden. And you ask yourself, where does this come from? Well, the thing is that that always existed. That came from the very moment that you decided to neglect that one tiny seed. There's good news now, there's bad news. The good news is that you could take care of it. You could change the soil, you could put fertilizer, you could spend some time. The bad news is that it takes much longer now than getting up and tossing that little tiny seed into the trash. That's us. That's our life. Think about it. That garden, that beautiful, amazing garden of flower, that's you in an essence. You're amazing, you're beautiful, full of emotion, full of love, but then very gentle, just like those flowers. Very peaceful. And that seed, remember that little tiny seed that we talked about, that you found? Those are the emotions that we don't want to deal with. Grief, sadness, anger, frustration. And sometimes we tend to just bury him. We say, oh, I'm not going to think about it. I'm just going to put it aside. Because at this moment, right here, right now, that's not something that I want to deal with. And we bury it. Couple of days, maybe a week, month, a year passes, you're sitting down, doing your thing, no care in the world. And suddenly, that rage of emotion comes. Thank you for the flower. And you ask yourself, what happened? What is this emotion? The thing is that that emotion always existed. We just neglected it. So sometimes, instead of just pushing things in, thank you very much, I appreciate it. Instead of thinking things in to that little void that exists in our brain, sometimes we need to sit down and ask ourselves, what does that mean for us? How does this make me feel? I feel sad, I feel angry, I feel lonely. I missed him, I missed her. I missed my parents, I missed my sister, I missed my whoever. and talk about it. Express it. Truly sit down and ask yourself, okay, this is what I feel. This is inside of me. I feel myself. I feel that emotion. I feel that anger. I feel that sadness. Now I want to reflect on it. Now I want to talk about it. And the more and more you talk about it, the more and more you learn to not only ignore it, because that's the most toxic thing you can do to yourself, but to rather cope with it. Moving on doesn't mean moving away. It means moving on with those emotions. It means coping with those emotions. And sometimes we all need a break. Every athlete that plays an elite sport, they don't practice 24/7. Before every game, they rest, they sit down, they concentrate, they cope with themselves. They take moments to recognize them, recognize everything that they have done. And sometimes the reason they do that, because sometimes we need to hit that reset button for ourselves. Yeah, crying is okay. It's okay to cry, dear. It's absolutely fine to cry. Sometimes we need to externalize our emotion. And crying sometimes helps. But the thing is that you have to remember, you cry for your love. You cry for your passion. You cry for that feeling. Some people say, oh no, crying is bad. No, crying is actually good. It's okay to cry, as long as you give yourself permission to cry for your emotion. But realize it's okay to not be okay, as long as we don't stay there. See, it's about recognizing you and recognizing what has happened in the past. We can't skip reality like video games. Rather, in reality, this is the life that we have. This is the life that we have chosen for ourselves. And there is one thing for certain. One thing for certain. And that is, we all at one point will have to go. So one thing to remember is that we can't escape it. Just like we can't escape death, we can't escape our emotion. And when we have those emotions, it's okay to sit down. It's okay to sit down and give ourselves a little bit of time to just be us, to just be you, to just recognize that you matter. And if you have to cry, give yourself that time. That emotion comes to you, let it go through you. Let yourself feel that emotion. Let yourself express that emotion. Because it is through that expression that you will be able to recognize you and what matters to you the most out of it all. It's not about winning or losing. It's not a race. Grief is a process. It's a process that you have to remind yourself of it. It's a process that you shouldn't forget about it. You shouldn't put it aside in your back pocket, hoping that it will go away. Grief is something that it comes and it's there to stay. And as sad and messed up as it is, that's unfortunately one part of life that we all have to accept. So, be it. Let's accept it. Let's sit down and cope with ourselves. Remind ourselves of the love, the passion, the joy that we had. Remind ourselves of the memories that we had. Remind ourselves of the love, the laughter, the joy that we had. I mean, when I lost my parents, I was devastated. I could not, for the love of me, I could not even sleep. For a long time, I was even scared of the dark, because all of those things happened while I was sleeping. Somebody woke me up and said, "Hey," oh, they cried, they hugged me, and they said, "Oh, this happened, poor you." But I told myself, I'm okay. And I tried to be strong. Even though I was a kid, I tried to not show any emotion. Like, I don't even care, because of the anger that I had, because of the frustration that I had towards my parents, because they left me. So I was frustrated. And I never truly sat down with myself and talked about my feeling until I got married. Once I got married, I sat down, I talked to my wife about it. And it made me feel so good, because for the first time in my life, I had someone to talk to. I had someone who could understand me, who showed me empathy, passion, without feeling pity for me. Thank you. So the goal to get over grief is to find someone who you love, who you can share things. And sometimes we don't have that person. We don't have that person that we love and we feel that type of connection. And it is those moments that we have to seek external support. We have to seek counsel, to have someone so we can talk to. First and foremost, talk to yourself. Remind yourself of the love, the passion, the joy that you had. And then seek external support. Share your feelings. We're social people. All of us, we're social people. That's part of being human. We act and we react in a way that is socially appropriate, one way or another. We might not all agree with this, but that's what we do. Why? Because that's embedded within us to be social. So, sometimes we have to seek outside help to find that socially appropriated support. And along the way, if you had to internalize something, it's okay to remind yourself to cry. It's okay to be angry. It's okay to be sad. One thing that I did when I was a kid, I told myself, it's not okay for me to be sad. I have to be strong. I have to go to school. I have to get a job. I have to do this, do that. Ooh. I made myself so busy that I completely forgot. But then deep inside, every time I would see a movie, a scene in a movie of parents' relationship with their child, it will always make me cry. Because I'm human. Just like you are human. Just like every single one of us is human, we all have feelings. We all have emotions, and sometimes it sucks. It sucks so bad. But then you gotta remind yourself that it's not something that you could read a book and master. It's something that you have to walk to it, towards it. So I feel for you. I understand your pain. The pain that you have, or the pain that you might have, or the pain that you're currently experiencing. I understand it. And I want to say that every single one of us either has or will experience that pain. And it's important for us to know the value that we have, to know the capacity that we have. Take one moment today, sit down with yourself, with your thoughts, and ask yourself, how do you feel? Are you okay? Am I okay? If I'm not okay, what can I do to be okay? Will I ever be okay? The answer is depends. Depends on how I treat myself. Depends on how I work with myself through these feelings, through these emotions, through this journey. Grief is nothing but a journey. It's a chapter of a book that we all have to read at one point. So we could simply ignore the chapter, or we could read through it. But doesn't matter if you ignore it or not, that chapter exists. And if you ignore it, you will never understand the impact that it had, the impact that it could have. And the result of it is always misunderstood. So give yourself time. Sit down today. Ask yourself what you love, what you care, what you wish. And reflect. And if you need support, seek out support. Because you, my dear, matter more than anything in this world. And I truly believe that. I wish you all nothing but the best. I wish you all joy, love, and I wish you all to find the true support that you're looking for. Thank you for joining me. I hope that you liked today's session. Like I said, I will do these videos, try my best to do it 5 times a week, Monday through Friday at 12 o'clock. So join me, and thank you so much for all of this and these great reminders. It is so important to be kind to our minds. You're helping so many, including myself. God bless you. Well, God bless you too as well, my dear. I wish you nothing but joy, happiness, and love. So if you find any value in this video, please share this video, leave a comment, leave a like, and subscribe to my channel for more videos. I wish you all the best. Remember, internalize, externalize, and talk. Thank you, and have a blissful and beautiful day.